We decided that the criteria for the books would have to be historical brilliance, but also readability. These are books you can read on the sun lounger.
There's so much history, and it's travelogue as well. So he's traveling around, visiting people and talking to people. It's such a brilliant mixture of all of that material. So I really, really recommend it.
So this is the summer reading edition of both the History Book Buffs and our collaborator, who we are very excited to have on the show, the absolutely brilliant Ollie Webb-Carter from the History Book Club. Hello, Ollie.
Hello, Antonia.
Hello, Ollie.
Roger. Yeah, hello, Roger.
So we are going to do a summer reading special, as lots of people are doing at this time of year, but we are mixing it up because we came to the conclusion that you are being presented, listeners, with huge numbers of shiny new books, and we're going to give you some classic bangers, some history books that have stood the test of time. We know they're brilliant because people are still reading them, and these are books that we particularly ourselves love and cherish and have a very special place on our bookshelves. Although I notice in terms of bookshelves, those of you who are watching this on video will note that Roger and I are surrounded by books, and Ollie seems to be surrounded by booze and
family heirlooms, by the look of it. Yeah, says a lot, yes, really.
You've exposed the fact that I am a complete amateur. I don't have
very
any
well bred and slightly drunk amateur.
Yes, they are based somewhere else. I promise viewers and listeners, I do actually read books, but they are not here.
Right. So when we were narrowing down our choices for this collaborative podcast, what we decided was that the criteria for the books would have to be historical brilliance, but also readability. These are books you can read on the sun lounger. These are books you can read on, in Ollie's case, a yacht in the Med or whatever it is that Ollie does with his summers. Or in Roger's case, a kind of camper van in Kent.
My first one is I always recommend this book because I just absolutely love it. And it's one of those that I sort of return to a lot. And it struck me at the time. I first read this in 1995 when it came out. Black Sea by Neil Asherson. And it's a sort of a tour of the Black Sea, and he basically goes all the way around the Black Sea. It's sort of a mixture of travelogue and history and politics and all of that mashed into one. Neil Asherson is and was a journalist, used to work for a long time at The Observer, had a great passion, I know, for Poland, but for Central Europe generally. After 89 and everything that happened, 89 and 91, it's him, both traveling around the fringes of the Black Sea, which then I suppose felt like, it was a very hopeful period, the mid-1990s, right? This was huge change had happened. Everything was looking positive. Those of us that remember the 90s, you might be too young, Antonio, I can't remember, but, this was a time of real hope in Eastern Europe. Not like it is maybe if you did the same journey now, for one point, you'd probably get killed on the way. It's much more dangerous and much more troubled place now, but then it was full of optimism and all that. And it's just a most wonderful book. He writes it so beautifully well, and it goes all the way from the Sarmatians and the Pontine Greeks, and brings it all the way back up to the Soviet Union, and then 89, 91. So it's just a fascinating sort of tour d'horizon of the Black Sea, and like I said, it feels all the more sort of poignant now, because 30 years on from when it first came out, the Black Sea is not the hopeful place that it was before, or certainly it's a much more troubled place than it was, and it actually makes it feel quite poignant. I'll be honest, but it's beautifully done. It's absolutely beautifully done.
It'd be quite good if
perfect holiday material.
He should write a sequel, shouldn't he? He should do the same journey.
I had the original, which I couldn't find, so I had to re-buy it, and it has been updated. So it now says from Pericles to Putin, but it's just so well done. There's so much history and there's so much, content that he puts in there, and it's travelogue as well. So he's traveling around, visiting people and talking to people and all of that. So it's such a brilliant mixture of all of that material. So I really, really recommend it.
I was going to ask about that, whether it covered the ancient period, and of course, if you've mentioned Pericles, it does, because the Black Sea's obviously got all these Greek cities, colonization throughout that era. How much does he go into that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Kherson, we hear about Kherson now, where the Russians do their vile human safari. That was, I think it was Chersonesus under the Greeks, wasn't it? It was a Greek settlement, that one. So yeah, all the Pontine Greeks, and even back to the Sarmatian tribes and the Khazars and all of this stuff. I mean, there's so much rich history in that area. Which I find absolutely fascinating. I remember, I think once we sat in a lecture, didn't we, Antonia, on the Sarmatians? Do you remember that? We were at a book festival somewhere, and we sat and listened to a lecture about the Sarmatians and how royally weird they were, and Scythians and people like this, and he covers all of that stuff. It's such a rich history, and it's one that for us, in Western Europe particularly, we just don't really have a handle on. We just think, oh, that's over there, that's the wilds of back and beyond. But it's got that hugely rich history, because obviously you've got the Caucasus on the eastern side, you've got the Balkans on the western side. They're radically different cultures, languages, histories, and all of that. And then, of course, Ukraine and everything that went before, Soviet Union, all of that stuff that we just mentioned. So, and Turkey in the south. So it's a hugely rich sort of smorgasbord of history.
I was reading about this this week, actually. The city of Kaffa.
Yeah.
Theodosia, I think, was its other name, in the Crimea. Did you know why it's significant for 14th century history?
Black Death.
Well done, Roger.
Yeah, it's where the Black Death sort of caught ship and came west, wasn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah. And came to, in Britain's case, it came to Lyme Regis, which is a lovely little detail, I always think. Whenever I go to Lyme Regis, I always think, this is where the Black Death came ashore.
Yes. And how does it read? Is he
yeah, lovely. Because he was a journalist, so as Antonia will testify, journalists,
we make
they have to be able to write. Yeah, you do, absolutely do. I mean, you have it hammered into you. If you can't do it, you're out on your ears. But at the same time, he's a journalist, but so he writes well, and he doesn't skimp on the history either. So there's a very good dose of the history as well. So it's a really nice mixture, and of course that journalistic element of going around and speaking to people in real time. So I used to love reading the books of Colin Thubrun, if you remember him, travel writer. And there was one called Among the Russians, which came out at a similar time. I think it was the early 90s, which I absolutely adored. And again, it was that period of sort of optimism in Russia as well. I mean, obviously it was very difficult economically and everything else, but it was a period of optimism. And he did the same thing. So it's travelogue. You're going to Novosibirsk and talking to grandmas in their Soviet era flats and finding out what life was like. It's absolutely fascinating stuff. And Asherson kind of does the same as well. So there's lots of that in travelogue stuff, which I love.
Brilliant.
So really good read.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this book as well. I really, really like it. Ollie, how about you?
I'm going to buy it.
It's a good book.
Hurrah!
Yes.
Mr. Asherson will be delighted, I'm sure.
He's getting on a bit now, though, isn't he?
He is, actually. Yeah, I met him about a year ago at we were on stage together. I did tell him how much he actually signed my book for me, which was very kind of him. He's a lovely fella, actually.
Ollie, go on then. What's your first pick?
Well, my one is, I guess, going back in time to the ancient Greece, and it's the biography of Alexander the Great, and it is titled Alexander the Great. It's written by Robin Lane Fox, and I've read, I think, about 5 or 6 biographies of Alexander. Robin Lane Fox's great rival, Paul Cartledge's book is very good, and also Peter Green's is very good, Alexander of Macedon. But the Robin Lane Fox one is the first one I read. It was actually, I think, an assigned text for my undergraduate degree. So that's when I first read it, I guess at a pretty impressionable age, learning about Alexander. But it just is wonderful, covering, of course, his entire life, but also he examines all the various theories and conspiracies, and he does it in such a way that you feel like you're in the hands of a complete master, which is in Lane Fox, he certainly is. As he's almost impossible to pin down, I think, Alexander. Funnily enough, there's a new book out about him.
But the new book is more of the kind of current scholarship, isn't it? Which is like Alexander as genocidal maniac, whereas Robin Lane Fox is more old. I think so, isn't it?
He has some flaws, but whether he is flawed,
a tendency to get pissed and set fire to people and and cities.
Yeah, but they didn't have firemen in those days, so
Well, so it's their own fault.
Yeah, in a way, yes. We're very keen to judge Alexander by today's standards.
When did this book come out, Ollie? This one, the one
I think it's 1971 or 72.
Okay, so it is very much classic, great man history in effect, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think Alexander is undoubtedly a great man, because he's called Alexander the Great.
Yeah,
and
the clue's in the name.
Yeah, precisely. He is, to me, he is.
Is it uncritical though, or is there?
Oh God, no. So, for example, a good one is the death of Alexander's father, Philip II of Macedon, who there are suggestions that Olympias, Alexander's mother, was involved in the killing, and Robin Lane Fox does not rule out the fact that Alexander may well have been involved in his father's murder, but he also makes the very important point that fratricide was not exactly uncommon in the Argead family in Macedon. They're all killing each other, killing their fathers or their sons or their brothers or their daughters. And I mean, it's a risky royal family to be a member of.
Yeah.
And Alexander, of course, when he became king or made his bid to become king, he was ruthless in dealing with his stepmother, who he put to the sword, and her baby daughter. Again, that sounds horrific now, but at the time, he was absolutely right to do that. So,
and it almost sounds very
contemporary.
Sounds very contemporary with all these blended families and stepmothers and all that sort of thing.
Well, Philip, I think, was married 6 or 7 times.
He followed the kind of Asiatic custom of taking more than one wife, didn't he? Which was part of the problem with the kind of dynastic wrangling.
Right.
Certainly irritated Olympias, I think, who is a wonderful woman, but someone who I wouldn't want to irritate myself. And Philip likely paid the price for that.
Well, I think it's a lesson to all men considering more than one wife. Make do and be nice to the one you've got. How's that for?
Completely agree. The amount of energy required to keep 6 or 7. I mean, 2. One's hard enough. Imagine 6. It's not worth it. But so there's that, and then to describe Alexander as a kind of genocidal maniac is not the right not the right analysis, I think, even in today's hyper-sensitive world that we live in.
Is that a little dash of projecting back modern sensitivities, do we think?
Well, there was also my hyperbole. Sorry. So,
yes.
There is, however, a modern strain of scholarship which says that Alexander the Great is not a flawed hero. He is a slightly demonic figure who, unasked, tramples through other people's cultures, putting people to the sword, burning their cities, enslaving their women and children, and generally behaving a bit like a bad guy, right?
Yeah.
So this is the reframing of Alexander the Great, but Robin Lane Fox is very firmly before that reframing gained currency, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I love the book. I mean, I think Robin Lane Fox writes so beautifully and so knowledgeably and so empathetically about the ancient world that I read anything he writes on it.
Yeah.
I think he was only 25 or 6 when he wrote it.
Yeah.
It won an award, I think.
That's annoying.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Everybody-
He's really old now, Roger.
Well, yeah. Well, that just makes everyone feel a little bit inadequate, doesn't it?
He was the advisor on the Oliver Stone movie, Roger,
Oh,
which I know you've
ouch.
seen that film.
I have seen that film. Yes, ouch.
And actually, he was an extra. He was on horseback, one of Alexander's companion cavalry.
Oh, well, there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's probably the first book you could pick up. I think the Paul Cartledge one's excellent as well. And the Peter Green one is really good. Those are the three. This Edmund Richardson who's this classicist. He's written this new one. I'm due to receive the book next week, and I'm going to be interviewing him. So
we'll listen out for that. Yeah.
I shall put your question around the reinterpretation of Alexander. I think he's a little bit more sympathetic to the probably 1970s view, which is the correct view. Everyone should be understanding that.
Yes. Anyone tuning into this will know that is the correct view, I'm sure. Yeah. Definitely.
Yes. But because the Persians started the whole bloody thing anyway. So, and I speak as someone who has a Persian wife. So,
yeah. So you do have to tread carefully on these things.
Yeah, and I'm being very objective, but the bloody Persians invaded Greece. So Alexander was simply righting a terrible wrong.
So in the modern version where he's a genocidal maniac, Parce Antonio Senior, are all those countries that he invaded, all those cultures that he destroyed, are they sort of living in some sort of nature? Is that
he didn't
part of the
destroy them,
narrative?
actually. He adapted and was quite happy to adopt local customs.
Right. Okay.
I mean, obviously, he won battles that would result in many deaths. He would sack cities and sell everyone into slavery if they resisted.
Yeah.
But that was simply, I would argue, a humanitarian approach, because if you enslave one city, kill all the men and sell the women and children into slavery, you're sending a very clear message to all the other cities not to resist, and so they won't, and therefore you will save more people in doing.
Shock and awe. I mean, it's shock and awe, isn't it?
Yeah. I think you could probably say that. He was prosecuted by the famous human rights lawyer Philippe Sands in a court of law recently. Alexander was prosecuted for, I think it was war crimes and genocide.
Oh my God!
I watched it. I watched this case unfold, and the defense barrister was brilliant. He brought a tear to my eye. It was so I was quite literally crying at the at his defense, talking about the trauma Alexander had experienced.
Yeah.
Things like this. A wonderful defense. Yes, and so the case was dismissed, and Alexander walked free.
Right. That brings us neatly over to you, Antonia. So what's your first shout?
Yeah. So I have many sort of bits of history that I adore and I get very into. And one of my favourite bits of history is the English Civil War, British Civil Wars, I guess, in 17th century Britain. And there's been a massive renaissance in writing about that in recent years. And, we've seen like Anna Kay and Jonathan Healy, these kind of breakout books of bringing the 17th century to a wider audience, which is amazing. But I wanted to recommend the book that I feel was the kind of genesis of that kind of push of new writing on the British Civil Wars, and that is Michael Braddick's God's Fury, England's Fire, 2008, I think. Michael Braddick was then at Sheffield University. He's now, I think, at Oxford. And it was the first of these kind of big new histories to kind of break out of academia, where because in the English Civil Wars is really popular with academics, it's less popular with the public, right? It doesn't catch people's imagination in the way that other kind of revolutions do. It's really complicated for, I think, reasons that actually people have instinctive sympathy towards the parliamentarians because we, in today's modern age, we're kind of egalitarian and we don't like monarchies very much, etc. But the parliamentarians are also the kind of, the ones who
They're
don't
fairly
like
awful,
having
aren't they?
fun. Right? Yeah, exactly.
Fairly awful people.
Yeah.
And then the more you get into it, the more you sympathise with the Cavaliers, surely,
Yeah, so it's hard to pick a side, right?
Yeah.
This is the problem with the English Civil War. If you like your history sort of relatively kind of easy to pick a side. So I'm looking at you, Roger Moorhouse, the historian of Nazi Germany. There's no debate about who the bad guy is in Roger's book, right?
Right, yeah. I was going to ask which side Roger would pick in the Second World War.
Yeah.
I do quite like the uniforms.
But going back to the Civil War, I mean, when I was younger, in the sort of teens and 20s, I was definitely a parliamentarian, but now I'm definitely a royalist.
Yeah, I think I'd be a royalist.
I think I'm a royalist trying very hard to be a parliamentarian.
and
like
failing.
Sometimes failing. Depends how much gin I've
Thomas
had.
Fairfax.
Yeah. I'm a big Fairfax fan. But anyway, the book is wonderful because it was one of the first books to break out of the academy into the wide world in the way that Anna Kay and Jonathan Healey and others have recently done. And it does one of those wonderful histories where it takes all the players. It's top down and bottom up. You get social change, religious change, the political upheavals of the different three kingdoms, which was kind of new academic kind of field back in the day about reframing this as a kind of political crisis because three kingdoms were held together and they had different religions and they were, tormenting each other. And he is a wonderful writer, a wonderful analytical brain taking you through all of this. If you've read Restless Republic and Jonathan Healey's book and you want to, do more. I mean, there's other brilliant historians of this period as well, like, Diane Purkis and Morrill and the brilliant recent biographies of Oliver Cromwell that just came out. So, like, there is so much about this period, but this is, for me, the one that re-sparked my love for it all.
So how does he deal with Oliver Cromwell in Ireland?
Well, the book starts in 1949, Ollie, the victory by the parliamentarians. But Cromwell in Ireland, I think, is one of those stories that sort of keeps giving and changing. A bit like what you were saying with Alexander the Great. There is a new wave of historians who have sort of said what he was doing was standard by the 17th century. It just looks worse. Because, it was within the context of civil wars and the religious elements.
The 30 Years' War is going on, and that's absolutely brutal. You think of the religious wars are just going on everywhere. It's not
and the English civil wars are not themselves without war crimes, not just within. I mean, one that always really gets to me is at Naseby, when the parliamentarians won, they rounded up all the women who were following the royalist army, and they cut off their noses because they were whores, right? So I think I'm not downplaying what happened in Ireland. I think it was a tragedy and it was terrible, but the idea that it was somehow unique, unusual, and outside the experience of warfare in the mid 17th century is just a stretch. I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's beyond the scope of this book, which is wonderful and takes us all the way through to 1949. Takes us all the way through to 1649. And Anna Kay's wonderful book, The Restless Republic, is actually, the protectorate. So this is kind of like a prequel.
Marvelous.
But yeah, I highly recommend. It's the best period of British history, and not enough people read about it.
Now, you just on the last point on this, Antonio, you were saying this as a subject doesn't really get much coverage, but it kind of does. It's one of those second rank to obviously the Nazis and the Tudors, but it's still, it's in the mix in terms of, popular history, isn't it?
What was the last TV series, the last film, the last novel, the last breakout?
There was one with Tim Roth in it, wasn't there?
Yeah, years ago.
Dominic West.
Yeah, it was on Channel 4. I can remember her face.
And there was a film with Rupert Everett, I think, as well, wasn't there? He played Charles I.
Yeah. All right, apart from those.
but they were quite a long time ago.
They were a
20 odd
long
years
time ago. And, if you think of the Tudors and, people don't really get taught the Civil War at school. And, people who read about history know about this stuff. People who don't, there are certain periods of history that transcend even people not really reading about history. And this is just not one of them. Like, all the myths, like Cromwell banning Christmas and, it's just, I feel like it's just not central enough to our island story in a way that it ought to be.
Yeah,
It's so important in the development
that's
of our
true.
democracy.
That's true. Yeah.
And Michael Braddick is brilliant on the religion elements as well, like how central religion was to what happens and to the eruption of the tension, and then putting it very firmly in a kind of wider European context of religious fallout from the Reformation. And I think that's really an important topic now. People are always looking for relevance, and Roger and I talk about this issue of relevance all the time because it's really annoying. Like, because sometimes you just want to read history on its own terms and not worry too much about how it fits into the present. But I would say we are in the middle of a revolution of seismic proportions that we don't understand and we can't predict, and it's going to end up in places we don't understand. In our case, it's a technological revolution, right? The Reformation is the same sort of thing because it all comes from printing Bibles with printing presses in the vernacular, and the upheavals across the whole of Europe, the deaths, the tragedies, those priests at Drogheda, they're dead because somebody invented a printing press, effectively, right? And I feel like, the understanding that what it feels like to be within the maelstrom of a revolution that you don't really recognise often the antecedents of, and you certainly can't predict the outcome of. I think this is very, very relevant to today.
Oh, that's profound thoughts, Senior. Well
Deep,
done.
man.
Yeah.
Deep.
How can you follow that, Roger?
I can't.
Well, go on, try.
Okay, well, I'll just move swiftly on. That's all I can do. My second one is going back. Again, it's this is like Black Sea. I suppose to a degree, these are the books that, in a way, formed us a little bit. I mean, certainly that's how I feel this is. And this one, Barbara Tuchman, The March of Folly, which came out in the mid-'80s. And, Barbara Tuchman, American popular historian, Guns of August, all of that stuff. She's a wondrous writer. And The March of Folly I read back in, I think, pretty much when it must have come out. The March of Folly struck me. I mean, at the time, it was just a wonderful read, and it's got its 4 main chapters. The thrust of it is that these are examples of folly in history, and she defines folly as the pursuit of policy contrary to self-interest, right? By states, by, dynasties, whatever it is. And she gives 4 main examples, and they're quite big chapters. The first one is the Trojans and the wooden horse. And then the Renaissance popes dealing with the Reformation. So that touches in on what Antonio was talking about just now. And then it's Britain's loss of the American colonies under George III. And then the Americans in Vietnam in the 20th century. So it's a really big sort of span of history, which to me is like a perfect holiday read right there, right? And it's so beautifully done, lots of characters. And she always comes back to this central thesis, which is that these are examples of folly in history, folly on the basis of, overweening pride, the sort of strictures of groupthink. I mean, this all sounds quite familiar. And actually, where I was going to come back to this was that I feel like we're in a period of folly now. I think this is another period of folly. I mean, quite how it's going to play out, we don't know. But, groupthink, institutional self-interest, you can see that today. Confirmation bias, all these things. And she sort of lists, shows examples. So it's quite, in a way, it's a little bit contrived because she's sort of projecting that back onto, certainly back to the Trojans. It can't be that easy to make the case, but still she does. And it's just brilliantly done. And it's the perfect, both light and entertaining and profound at the same time. Perfect for your Sunday.
A bit like me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm loving that she's picked the Trojan horse, Roger.
Yeah.
That's bloody brilliant.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's a myth. It's a myth grounded in reality
Yeah.
somewhere
Well, that's what I
there.
mean.
But
And that's why it feels a bit contrived, because she is projecting back that thesis to, some probably some rather dodgy sort of semi-mythical material. But, she pulls it off, and it's a great read. I mean, the latest chapter on Britain in the 18th century, losing America, and then the Americans themselves in Vietnam. Those two chapters are absolutely compelling, right? There's not many holes you can pick in that. In terms of that central thesis of this being folly, right? Something completely detrimental to your own interest, and yet, year after year they pursue the same policy. It's brilliantly done, really is, and hugely entertaining.
yeah, Vietnam especially. I mean, it's just you year after year, it's more and more bad news.
Yeah,
You just plow on.
yeah.
But you can see
Yeah,
it with
exactly.
Putin now, can't you? It's that same thing of you get to a certain position and you are literally, there is no way out. You're on the ramp. You can't get out again. So you can only escalate or,
Yeah, you can only keep going through.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
There are estimates, I think, of 1 million Russian casualties.
Yeah, more than.
So that's dead and
Casualties,
wounded.
definitely. Yeah, yeah.
Dead and wounded.
Yeah.
So the war in Afghanistan in the 80s took 10 years, and I think the number killed was about 15,000.
Yeah,
Fraction.
it's a fraction, and that created ructions in later Russian society. So I mean, we're yet to see how this plays out. I mean, we're digressing, of course, but yeah, that's a huge thing for Russian society to wear for the next 2 decades. Are the losses in Ukraine now? And that's all going to play out, and it's going to play out in, family life. It's going to play out in society. It's going to and that's going to kick on into politics. So yeah, it's not good.
Fascinating stuff. Well, that Barbara Tuchman sounds brilliant. I might give that a whirl. Ollie, what's your next one, Angel?
I'm going to slightly manipulate the way this is done, because I realised that the book I've picked, which is absolutely brilliant, it's called Dreadnought, Britain, Germany and the Coming of the Great War by Robert K. Massey, who I first encountered when I was studying history A-level, Peter the Great. I read his book on Peter the Great, which is also brilliant. And he also wrote Nicholas and Alexandra, which was then made into a successful film. So he's an incredible writer, because if you could get sort of, a schoolboy reading what was about 1,000-page book on Peter the Great, then
yeah, that's a win.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
And so this is not a dry history of the build-up to the First World War. It is incredibly rich. He perhaps strategic developments between Germany and Britain, and basically the pursuit of a battle to have the biggest navy. Kaiser Wilhelm obviously very envious of his grandmother's fleet, and then his cousins, and there's very much Kaiser Wilhelm embarrassing himself really and behaving badly and wanting
which he does at regular intervals. I mean, he's hilariously unscripted, isn't he, Wilhelm? He really
yes.
Yeah.
I know. He's such an odd figure, and it talks about his relationship, how Wilhelm gets rid of Bismarck, basically puts Bismarck out to pasture, and then replaces him with this sort of increasingly, I guess, incompetent generals in charge of the army. So, but it is fantastic. It began to get very obsessed with how many knots a battleship could do, and whether that was better than another battleship that could do a couple of knots fewer or more. So you do get quite obsessed with all the arms race of all these various fleets, and it's just really thrilling. There's lots of great characters in there. Churchill, you've got Edward VII, and obviously Wilhelm. There's the various other parliamentarians, and Asquith and Lloyd George. Really brilliant. And Jackie Fisher is a key figure in this as well, actually, the First Lord of the Admiralty. So it's a wonderful book. But the reason why I'm slightly manipulating the setup is that I realized to my horror, Antonia, that this book is, according to Amazon, 1,500 pages. Yes. So I've now realized I'll have infuriated the listeners and viewers because, I mean, whilst I would happily take it on my holiday, I realised a 1,500-page book is not necessarily the first one to pack. So I thought
It might just be the only thing you pack.
Yeah, well, exactly. You have to leave a whole load of stuff out. But can I sneak a more light-hearted one in? And it's this, which is
Flashman!
Flashman and the Redskins.
Brilliant.
And I love Flashman into all conversations, any conversations, Ollie.
Yeah, so Flashman's wonderful. And I was actually quite shocked.
Why?
Because I didn't realise, because I only read it, I think, in my 20s, so I hadn't quite anticipated quite what a bounder he was. But that was after the sort of 20-odd pages. You soon start empathizing with Flashman, and he is just the most extraordinary character. This one, Flashman and the Redskins, is my favourite. It's the one where he goes to America, he bumps into all these Native American heroes, Crazy Horse, Geronimo. He gets mixed up. He's arrested for freeing slaves and arrested for slave trading. So that gives you an indication of this sort of fellow Flash he is. And he has his way with all sorts of women whilst he's there, and ends up with Custer at the Battle of Little Bighorn. So it's the most extraordinary Flashman book. It's really wonderful and definitely great on a sun lounger.
I absolutely love Flashman, and I love Flashman and the Redskins as well. And I think it actually fits into some of the other things we've been talking about today, because one of the things that George MacDonald Fraser does in this book is there are sort of villains on all sides, right? So he's very sympathetic to the Native American cause and how, how utterly terrible the situation is for them. But neither does he pretend that they are a sort of, living in a kind of utopian paradise that the Westerners have come to destroy. Like, they behave badly too. Everybody behaves badly, and Flashman behaves worst of all. And I think this idea that we've touched upon in the other books we've talked about today, of like judging people by their own times and by the mores of those times, rather than this wearisome kind of retrospective, hindsight-driven kind of rush to moral judgment from our position of great kind of moral superiority, is just absolute insanity.
Yes, and it's ahistorical. It's ridiculous. I mean, we need to get to the end of this episode.
But Flashman and the Redskins
collective history very quickly.
It's true, but Flashman and the Redskins definitely does not do this. And if you don't descriptions of Flashman behaving terribly towards the enslaved.
Yes, he has a way of describing, I would say, people who aren't British, basically, as if you're not British, then even if you are British, he basically, I don't think he has a friend. He's just...
Yeah. And the brilliant thing, of course, is that it's not as if he is being beastly toward the natives while also being a paragon of virtue. He's being beastly to the natives while being emblematic of the worst of British colonialism and arrogance and dickheadishness, if you like. So, it's actually super clever, and
he's an equal opportunities arsehole, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And horrible to all his women, who still can't get enough of him. Flashy.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly the one in Afghanistan. He's a rapist in it, and it's extraordinary. And
has he not been cancelled yet? Is this?
Well, I think there have been I think people get very uncomfortable if you start talking about Flash. There are certain people who
it's just lucky we haven't done that then, really.
Well, since it's only people our age who read Flashman still, so we don't do cancelling, so it's fine. He's safe for now.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. So my last book is also a novel, and this is Captain Corelli's Mandolin, which was, you guys will remember, massive in the
Massive.
90s.
Absolutely massive. Yeah.
I mean, Roger Morehouse, you've probably even read it. I mean, you
I have
don't read
actually.
novels.
I
There you
I don't really
go!
read.
I
Absolutely.
haven't read
have,
it.
Yeah.
Ollie, you haven't read it. Oh,
Well,
my.
I mean, you were probably only 6 when it came out, though, weren't you, Ollie?
No, I remember. I think I was about 20 when it came out.
Yeah,
What was
you
it?
were, because I
95.
I can remember solidly being at university when I read it, and I mean, I didn't go to lectures anyway, but I definitely didn't go to any that week.
But I was very.
was-
I was that annoying character who thought, "Oh, everyone's reading it. I'm not going to read it."
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's me. That's me too. But then
but
I did read it, so yeah.
listen, so the reason I'm reanimated by Captain Corelli's Mandolin, which is a wonderful novel which I've read multiple times, and I actually own a signed proof edition of, is because my daughter has just read it, and she's 18, and I read it for the first time when I was 18, and I'm often nervous about giving her books because, like, I don't. It's up to her what she reads. I don't want to impose, but she asked for suggestions, and I suggested this one. She's just finished her A level, and I cannot remember a more visceral reaction to a book. She is a reader, which is unusual amongst young people,
Mhm.
sadly.
Mhm.
But she was crying and laughing and couldn't stop reading it, and was putting down her phone for hours upon end to find out what happens, and then hated the ending so much that she's still not speaking to me, basically.
It's your fault.
Yeah, so this is like the absolute level of the visceral reaction to this book, and I thought it was wonderful. I
brilliant.
loved this because seeing someone her age so engrossed, so immersed, weeping, laughing. I mean, the whole gamut made my heart sing. And it's
Yeah.
a wonderful book. And Ollie, I can't believe you haven't read it. You've got to read it. It's
I'm going to read
brilliant.
it now. I know. I really do want to now. I mean, I did watch the film.
Oh, fie upon
with
you.
Nicolas Cage.
No. Oh my god.
But now there was a scene in it that made me laugh long and hard, which was, I think, must have come from the book because it was too good to come from Hollywood. And it's, I think, when the Italians capture the town in Kefalonia and the mayor refuses to surrender to the Italians. Wonderful. And he insists you'll only surrender to the German and he won't. And I love that. I love the fact that the Greeks, 3,000, 2,000, 2,500 years on, are still superior to the Italians.
Yeah.
Listen, there's so much in it that you're going to absolutely love. I mean, we were talking about having lots of wives earlier. I mean, it opens with the doctor, who's the best character in it. And a man comes to see the doctor. I don't know if you remember this, Morehouse. And he's deaf in one ear, and the doctor has a rummage about, and
He's
he
got a pea in his
finds a pea, an ancient pea stuck in his ear. So he fishes it out, and the bloke can hear again for the first time in 40 years. And then, like, a week later, he turns up with a pea, and he's like, "Will you put it back in? My wife has drove me insane." It is the most perfect combination, I think, I mean, there's a beautiful love story at the centre of it that everybody knows, the Greek girl, the Italian officer, like, it's gorgeous. But it is politically incredibly astute. It's brilliant on the experience of being occupied by the Germans. The massacre of, there's a big massacre that we're building towards, that those of us who know anything about the Germans' occupation of Italy know about. There is stuff about, there's a good Nazi in there who turns out, is he so good? I mean, so it's kind of political stuff is brilliant. The Greek partisans are in there, the experience of warfare. I mean, one of the things that really scarred Lara was his unbelievably up close depictions of what it was like to fight mountain warfare in World War II with no equipment and, like, your body parts freezing off you. And it is brilliant, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. And if you haven't read it, or it has been a horrifyingly long time since you have read it, because obviously I read it when I was 18, which is a horrifyingly long time ago, pick it up again, take it with you, give it a dust off, and there could be nothing more ravishing than spending your summer on a Greek beach reading Captain Corelli's Mandolin.
That's perfect. I'm actually going to Greece in July, and I think I'm going to take a copy with me, Senior. There you go.
Oh,
You've
you
inspired me.
should. Yeah, it's just magical. So
Wonderful.
there we
I
go.
just got back from Crete and I read a very good novel when I was there by Michael Frayn, which is
yeah.
making me laugh about the newspapers in the 1960s. Is just brilliantly funny as well. So I think books that make you laugh are the ones that I think I don't read enough of.
Yeah. So Flashman and the Redskins and anything by Woodhouse. That's actually all we should take with us this summer. Wonderful. Thank you so much, gentlemen. That has been magical, and I hope we've given people some ideas. And if you've got any thoughts on the books we've recommended or any other fantastic ideas of history books, particularly that are unputdownable on a sand lounger, but also grounded in top history, then do get in touch. You can find Roger and I at the History Book Buffs on kind of various social media platforms, and Ollie is the History Book Club, also on various platforms, which we will put below. So thank you for listening. Thank you, Ollie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks,
Splendid.
Ollie.
Thank you for listening in to our episode classic picks for the summer. This is just a quick heads up that Roger and I will be taking a pause from the history book buffs for the summer, so we can go and lie on some sun loungers and read some books for pleasure ourselves. But we will be back in September with brand new episodes. So subscribe, follow, don't miss our semi-triumphant return in the autumn. Have a wonderful summer, and we'll see you then.